Hi. How's everybody doing? For today's video, I thought I would share something again with you. Seeing that I'm always thinking of ways to improve health and lifestyle, I found this book that was among my collection of books or self-help books. Totally forgot that I had that. It's a book on folk medicine. This book is as old as I am. And you can always take a look on Google if you're interested on buying it. I think it's eBay that they have some for sale. Yeah. So here, nearly 500,000 copies sold in hardcover at $2.95. Now only 50 cents. Good, down-to-earth horse sense. New York Journal of America. Hundreds of thousands of American readers have eagerly bought this illuminating volume describing the benefits and lore of Vermont folk medicine and the wondrous nature secrets of honey and apple cider vinegar. Some of my true beliefs. Yes. Now thousands abroad are acclaiming it. Country doctor, best-selling author, DeForest Jarvis is a long-time general practitioner of sound professional standing. Now nearly 80, he is still attending to his practice and finding time for his hobbies. From Vermont Life. Well, he's no longer with us now. But this book, it might be old and somewhat outdated, but the information that it has is still outgoing as of today. Can you believe it? I've tagged or bookmarked some of the highlights. The contents. And you have here forward definitions. Vermont environment and the lifespan. The animal laws. Your beginning. Your radical pattern and Vermont folk medicine. The first yardstick of your health. The insights of childhood. Potassium and its uses. The usefulness of honey. the usefulness of kelp, the importance of iodine, castor oil and corn oil, medical reasoning behind Vermont folk medicine. These are the basic highlights of the book. Then they've got here, for further information, the appendix, further studies made on animals, some other uses of apple cider vinegar, folk medicine and beverages, chemical analysis of kelp, and then harmful bacteria and alkalinity. I'm going to read off some of it here before getting into the highlights. Folk medicine reaches very far back in time. Nature opened the first drugstore. Primitive man, the animals depended on preventive use of its stock of plants and herbs to avoid disease and to maintain health and vigor. Because man and the animals were constantly on the move, nature's drugstore had branches everywhere. Wherever in the world you were sick, you would find in the fields its medicines to cure you. Its materials for curative herbal teas and ointments. So true. Vermont folk medicine has been unfolded in the Vergreen Mont Mountains. Since Aboriginal times, it adapts very old physiological and biochemical laws to the maintenance of health and vigor in the environmental conditions of Vermont living. Now, just to specify, this says Vermont living, but here where I live in Quebec, I'm so close to Vermont and Maine that a lot of our conditions and our environmental plants or nature is similar to what's described in this book. That's why I like it. And going on, as with all folk medicine, from time immemorial, the ideal of Vermont folk medicine is to condition the body in its entirety so that disease will not attack. Now and then, one finds people taking it for granted that folk medicine is a vague term for the collection of medical old wives' tales. It is inevitable it's inevitable that some myths would creep in along the way. For example, when I was a child, a string of Job's tear, a species of grass having round, shiny grains, said to resemble the patient's tears of the sorely tried Old Testament character, frequently were hung by a mother around the neck of her child to help him cut his teeth. And of course, all of us have heard of the supposedly magical, if smelly, powers of a little sack of asafoetida, the gum resin substance with the garlic odor, which, when worn around the neck through the cold winter months, would surely repel sickness. In considering folk medicine, obviously witch doctor myths should be separated from the genuine article. Now, this is a lot of talk, you could say. But besides all the life information out of the book, like here they talk about the environment and the lifespan. Now, they access a lot of information, and they say that the information is basically from Vermont, but this book also could be referenced, I would say, from the whole world, around the globe. Because there's a lot of new information that has been publicized since this book has come out. And there's a lot of new information that I have used myself and found out myself. The animal laws. Of course, man tends to be a rebel against nature, and it's deserted from the animal kingdom. No, and a deserter from the animal kingdom. In the light of this fact, let us consider the animal laws, which apply to man as well as animals. Farm animals are a good example of these laws. In their own way, cattle, horses, hogs, and other domestic livestock are just as natural as the wild animals which roam the untouched forest. And if we will but take the trouble to study them, they can tell us many valuable lessons. Country children know this. City children, having missed the close touch of daily association with farm animals often grow up without any knowledge of animal laws. This is a true fact because as a person living in the country, I went through basically this because I grew up in the city. I was born in Montreal, Quebec. And in the city, there's no animals, well, besides cats and dogs and certain strays. But I didn't really grow up as a young child knowing about the laws of animals because there were none. It's only until, like I've said in my previous videos, it's only until I was around the age of 8 or 9 that really we moved to the farm and that I started really knowing about livestock, you could say. Because before then, we also had a country place up north. And a lot of wild animals would come to see us. So I knew about that. But really, I never touched a cow or a chicken. I think the first animal I have really, like, nature animal that I touched was, I would say, a rabbit. That was the first one. A little baby rabbit. And kept it as a pet, of course. But when I got on the farm, that's when I started to apply the laws of the animals and nature. And here, let's say your beginning. It is sometimes difficult to grasp the once we were microscopic specks. Yes, of course, we were just a bunch of bacteria. Oliver Wendell Holmes used to say that the life of the individual begins 100 years before he is born. It is certain that we do not start physiologically at birth, but 9 months before coming into this world. The speck, which is our beginning, becomes alive through foods. It takes shelter, steady warmth, elimination of waste, and a healthy mother eating healthy foods to give an infant a good start. Of course, that's where the basics all begin. That's where we come into place. I'm highlighting the book, of course. I'm not going to read the whole thing because there's a lot of storytelling, and I don't find that's really the point that I'm reaching for in this your radical pattern and Vermont folk medicine. Interest in a different radical characteristics in humans and in natural part of Vermont folk medicine, it carries over from interest in the care of feeding of different breeds of cattle. Here in Vermont, there are 3 head of cattle for every 1 person. A herd may be Holstein, Jersey, Gurney, yes, of course, Guernsey, or some other breed. The farmer knows Guernseys and Holsteins cannot be identically fed, or Jerseys fed like some other breed. Of necessity, he must learn the characteristics of the breed making up his dairy herd, of course. In order to make his herd pay, for each cattle herd on a Vermont farm must show a profit. Of course, when you're on a farm, what you feed your animals, like what humans eat, same thing as the way we feel and the way we process the food. Animals are the same way. The healthier your livestock is, or like they say, the herd, the more profitable it'll be. Just like us. The better off that you are fed and well taken care of, the more profitable you will be. I'm sorry for the outdoor noise, but like I said, I live in the country, and right now I'm in my studio, but some of the noise I can't eliminate. It's nature's way of saying, well, the grass is too long. Time to cut me. And we've been having a lot of rain lately. So, of course, everybody's out now that it's not raining to cut the grass. And I've been kind of busy myself. Just learning all new things that apply. I'm going to go skip some other things here. I'm going to say like here, okay, the first yardstick of your health. Like, what are you going to do to improve your health? Will you apply some of the laws that would help you and improve your life to be more profitable? Like the instincts of childhood. There are self-protective instincts in young children which impel them to seek foods needed at the moment by their body cells. I made a study of children under 10 years of age who lived on farms in order that I might learn the workings of these instincts. I discovered that these young farm children chewed corn stalks, ate raw potatoes, raw carrots, raw peas, raw string beans, raw rhubarb, berries, green apples, and so on, so on, so on. Of course. Ate salt, cattle box, drank water, chewed hay. Now they're talking about the cattle. Notice. Yes, a fact, again. When I was growing up on a farm, of course, me too, I'll come back to that as a reference. We had gardens, and we had vegetables, and we grow fruit. And like I reference all the time, say, if you were hungry, you didn't have to go into the fridge or into the cupboard to go see if there was a snack. You could just go grab a carrot right out of the ground, wipe the dirt off, and just eat it like that. As they say, but the potatoes, I learned at a very young age that it's not good to eat a raw potato because it has bacteria. And if you want to get a gastro or a sore stomach or diarrhea, that's not a good idea. Some vegetables and some fruits will have an impact on your body and your stomach. Like most people know, if you eat too many crab apples, you're going to get a tummy ache. Of course, it's natural. But you have to be reasonable with your intake. And here, going again, I got a reference. I put a reference here. Potassium and its uses. We all know bananas contain a lot of potassium, but when you're in our environment, like bananas, we can't grow that here. So there's the alternatives of what, or where you're going to get the potassium. You say like green leaves, plant tree buds, tree barks, plant roots, fruits, grapes, potatoes, cranberry bush. Ways in presenting the body with potassium. Now they're back to cattle again. Well, of course, and our body does need potassium in its everyday function. The flowers. Folk medicine holds potassium to be the most important mineral. In fact, the key mineral in the constellation of minerals. It is so essential to the life of every living thing that without it, there would be no life. Nature has flung it about with such prodigality, prodigality. I'm telling you, some of these words are tongue twisters. That one way, say it is among the most generously and widely distributed of all the tissue minerals. Well, I agree, it's true. But there are a whole bunch of other minerals that your body also needs. Besides just potassium, you got calcium, you got zinc, nitrates, you got all kinds of different minerals that our body needs to survive. Here, how to maintain your weight, high blood pressure, which is one of my problems that I have. But my blood pressure also is related to everyday stress, because when I was working, you could say, in a certain field, customer service, which I have specified before, was very stressful. It wasn't like when I was working outdoors, absorbing nature. There was a lot less stress. I mean, it was so relaxing. The work was very hard physically, but mentally, what a purge, I would say, to the brain. Now, there's a lot of information in the book that I'm not even going to go through, because it's how to use, folk medicine in, like, if you have certain ailments, if you're not feeling good, like I was saying, when it comes to your stomach, or if you're dizzy, the usefulness of honey, and of course, when you have like ginger and certain herbs, or like I've even talked before, when you're using certain spices to help you. The importance of these things that sometimes we ignore. Like they even say here, when it comes to the usefulness of honey, and honey in infant feeding. Like I don't know a mother that hasn't taken the sus, the thing that they put in there, not a retainer, thing they'd suck on, as a child in the mouth, and the mother would dip it in honey, to help calm the child, that they would suck on it to relieve pain or, the stress that a child goes through. Because sometimes they were also teething. So they have that. But then I read an article at one time, and it said that you had to be careful of the type of honey that you were giving your child, because it could contain bacteria. Now that's not good honey, because pure honey is a natural preservative. It's one of the best natural products that you can use, even as of today, I would say. I do read a lot of articles when I have a chance, especially sometimes when I would be at the hospital for X reasons. There would always be magazines, Reader's Digest magazines, and I would sometimes borrow the articles from the magazine. Our secret. Don't tell me. Like I'm the only one. Yeah. But I made up on that fact because sometimes I would bring them back, magazines that I had. So they hear the home remedies even doctors use. So just hear a fact like here, like tape erases warts. See, I didn't know that. I thought the only way you could remove warts was with that, compound W product. But no, there are natural ways of removing warts. It's like you have a wart on the finger. You wrap it in adhesive tape, so that no air gets in. Put on like 4 or 5 layers if you have to. And you keep that on for 6, 7 weeks. Of course, it's logic. The wart won't get any air, so it's going to die off. But when I was young, also I had warts on my hands. Didn't know where it came from. They said because I played too much with toads. That's a myth. No. And I didn't lick any toads either to get high. That's another myth. Well, in certain countries, be careful, don't lick toads. You might get high. Anyways, we went to see one of those country doctors. And all he did was he rubbed my hands a few times. Like so, the finger. And then he said, your warts will disappear. But what I didn't know is that he gave a prescription to my mother, which was, can you believe it, calcium pills. Strong calcium pills. We had to take the calcium pills because my brother too came and he had some too. We had to take the calcium pills for a couple of weeks. And what do you know? The warts disappeared. So we thought this doctor was great because he just had to touch us. Again, natural medicine. Here. Tea bags dry out sweaty feet and sores. Baking soda for itches. Cayenne pepper warms cold feet, of course. garlic fights a cold and flu. Definitely. Mom used to give us a clove of garlic in a teaspoon with molasses, and we had to swallow that. Can you believe it? Growing up, I don't remember ever really having a bad cold or having an earache. And it's not because we didn't go play outside in all kinds of weather, but it's because we were eating right. That's why the importance of that. But we also had our flu shots and the shots that we had to have, our immune shots. Very important. Going on here, ice relieves insect bites, clogged sinuses, and toothaches. But that's only temporary stuff. In my other videos, I explain the benefits also of using natural products like mint, lemon balm, all kinds of other natural products you can use. But in this book, one of the references, or what they talk about a lot, is one of my favorite topics, and that's apple cider vinegar. Uses of apple cider vinegar in Vermont folk medicine. Now, they're going to reference a lot of different ways you can use apple cider vinegar. And believe me, I do use a lot of it. I even take some apple cider vinegar every day, at least a couple of tablespoons. It helps to burn those bad fats. But here, they say here some of the things that you can relieve with apple cider vinegar, like poison ivy. Use equal parts of apple cider vinegar and water. Dab it on the affected part and allow to dry on the skin. Apply often. I've done that. Yeah, because I walked in poison ivy once. It works. Can you believe shingles? You know all those commercials we see all the time about, get your shots or whatever because of shingles. Well, they say you can use apple cider vinegar and apply it to the shingles to help dry it. Of course, it's going to burn like hell, but apparently it works. I've even had certain, sores or, bumps or like acne stuff. And I've used apple cider vinegar to soothe them. It helps. Burns. Of course, apply that to a burn. Night sweats. If the skin surface of the body is given a cupped palm hand bath of apple cider vinegar at bedtime, the night sweats will be prevented. And another thing too, varicose veins. I didn't know by applying apple cider vinegar to varicose veins that it helps to shrink them. In a cupped hand, you apply that to the veins, and what they say at night and morning, twice a day. In addition to applying the vinegar to the veins, 2 tablespoons of vinegar in a glass of water are taken twice a day. See, that's what I was saying, what I take. And of course, it goes on, but with today's technology, I find what's good is because on the internet you can find a lot more information, but give and take what's good and what's bad, you know. Try and read between the lines of what's out there. And just to let you go on this little note here, you know, which I found funny. Treatment for hangover. You know, they talk a lot here about different ways, or, you know, when they say coming sober to sober up. When you've been on a drinking spree, a man in his 40s had been drinking from December 27th to January 10th. He was paralyzed drunk when seen. He was given 6 tablespoons of honey. 20 minutes later, he was given another 6 teaspoonfuls, and 20 minutes later, a 3rd dose of the same amount. This made 18 teaspoonfuls of honey in 40 minutes. Besides his bed was a 5th of liquor, with 1 drink left in the bottle. 3 hours later, the drink was still there. Treatment was continued. 3 doses of 6 teaspoonfuls of honey, each repeated at 20-minute intervals. And they kept on doing the process, you know, to help the guy with his drinking. So see, honey has its benefits. If you've been partying too much. And then they were saying just here also, you know, the uses of kelp. I find that also a good intake of kelp is good for protein, fiber, nitrogen, to extract fat. And here, anything else? Oh yes, like we're saying about potassium and all that. It's also a very good benefit too. From kelp. Sodium, potassium, calcium, iron, magnesium. So it goes on. But not just besides guilt, but I find that if you're going to have a diet of certain salads, they're all good for you. So it helps to also digest your food when you have a bit of salad as a side order. So good. Have your greens. Gotta have your greens. So I'm gonna leave you on that because I'm almost out of battery. So take care. We love you. And go and get yourself some apple cider vinegar. Now they're really at it. So take care. Love you. Bye for now.